Hello everyone and welcome to Dead Internet Chronicles, where I observe and react to what I perceive to be a complex collection of chatbot chaos. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe so that the algorithm can help me grow my channel. Please do be aware that the themes discussed in this video may be dark and unconventional, and my narration is not explicitly an endorsement. That being said, let's get started. So today's video is going to be something a tad bit different. I recently discovered an image board on the website anon.cafe. I am not sure what the rest of the website looks like because I have yet to explore it, but I know that I did a video on this and the audio got messed up. So I have looked around this board a little bit. I looked at the first page of it, and it's a very comfy board. As you can tell, the design is very Y2K. Elements like this are things that we don't really see much anymore. Fonts like this, we don't really see fonts like that anymore in design. Italicized text, it appears to be like, people don't really design websites this way anymore, and that's partially because of the fact that services like WordPress, and all these other services that help you design websites, they all have kind of the same style. Every website looks the same in 2023. And that's if you even, get on websites in general. You could argue that websites are dead in the age of smartphone apps. I mean, every company has a website, but a lot of people just use their app if it's available. We switch between the same 3 or 4 apps. We go from Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and then what else is there? Twitter, maybe, X. I don't really use X that much, but I use the other 3 fairly often, and it's all very soulless. That's what I like so far about the retro board on Anon Cafe, is the fact that it's a very comfy, soulful website. I like the design, I like the colors, I like the pink. I'm a big fan of the color pink. Maybe that's just my history with Vaporwave, but I've always been a big fan of the color pink. So I think it's really cool. As you can tell, there are some tables. We've got the main menu, which has home, boards, overboard, safe for work overboard, info, account, settings, and then you can choose your theme. This makes it like a classic image board, which kind of takes out the soul a little bit. And then you can do tomorrow, which is another classic image board theme, but we're going to do the board specific and bring it back to that style because it's just so comfy. You instantly feel like you're at home whenever you visit this website, and that's what I enjoy about it. You can see we've got favorite boards, which is probably just a site-wide thing. I don't really use this website, so I can't really say that I have a favorite board on it. And of course, there are no favorite boards listed. And then we've got global announcements, and it says Anon Cafe fallback file v1.1, and it says save this file. Updated December 13th of 2021. So it's been a while since they've had a global announcement. Board owners, hourly thread limits in early 404 help protect your boards against erasure under slide attacks. Enable them today. And then it says, want your event posted here, requests accepted in this meta thread. We've got, a post box here that is traditionally an Imageboard thing. Just how it's centered is really cool. And the design on like the boxes is just, I don't know, something about it feels like a traditional website. I guess it was designed that way, so it serves its purpose. But we've got a little captcha down here. This is looks like a hard captcha. Some of these websites have really unusual captchas, but my favorite captchas were the old 4chan captchas. And they had 2 words. And what happened was they would always be really unrelated, but really absurd. And people made a lot of comics out of those. And they were really funny. I was going through my old internet folder the other day, and I saw so many of them that were just so absurd, and I cackled for a long time. And that's going to be a video for the future. I started working on it before I got my new microphone today, and I got about 6 hours into it and kind of ran out of gas. And then I realized that, the first part of a video is the most important part of the video in retention. So if I start off that video with bad audio and then switch the audio throughout, then nobody's going to even get to the better audio. So I plan on redoing that video. It's going to be a very long, probably multiple part video, because of YouTube's time restrictions and everything. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a fun time. I can't wait to do that video again and actually get it finished this time, because I think you all will enjoy the contents of it. But that being said, let me get into this board, and we're just going to scroll through and read some threads. I'm going to read the front page, and it should be fun. So this says, want to watch some retro TV? Check out my00stv.com. I don't know if that website is still active or not, but we can look and see real quick. Oh, it says teleporting. We are teleporting to another dimension, I hope. And it's got an old tube TV. Well, I don't know if that's a tube TV. It's just an old late 90s, 2000s TV. Saw a lot of those as a child. Okay, so that was very unpleasant. I cut it out, but it was just a loud noise and static on the TV. So yeah, it wasn't very fun. But we've got all kinds of different categories over here. There's kids, movies, music, news, soaps. So they've got all kinds of different genres of television from this era. And there's also other ones too, like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And they each have their own TV design, which is really cool. And you can donate to them, to keep the project alive. You can buy them a coffee. I don't know what the legality of this is, unless those TV shows and everything are all in the public domain or whatever. But I know YouTube, for some reason, lets a lot of things slide. I haven't really figured out why that is, but that's neither here nor there. So going back to retro, we have the first post, and it says, alright, this is meant to be a successor to Y2K on the old 8chan. However, I have expanded it to include both the 1990s and the 2000s, and not safe for work content is allowed, provided it's actually related to the purpose of this board and doesn't violate any of the site's core rules. So, I mean, right off the bat, we can see that this is a descendant of 8chan, which may be a red flag to you. I used 8chan in its heyday, but I didn't use it for the extremist boards. I used it for the other boards. Like, one of my favorite boards was Cyber. It was a cyberpunk themed image board, and it had a lot of cool content on it. You know, I learned a lot of things about the genre, and it was just a comfy time. You know, I never knew that 8chan was known for the extremism that it became known for, because I didn't even frequent those boards. So, like, whenever I learned about all the things that happened, you know, I was startled, because I used that website. Like, you know, I didn't, I don't know, I think the platform was a good idea at first. It just devolved into something a lot worse, which arguably happens with every quote-unquote free speech community. I consider myself a free speech person, but at the same time, I also recognize that it can lead to destruction. So I think it's healthy to find a balance, and I don't think Reddit is doing that properly. I don't think Facebook is doing that properly, or Instagram, or any of the big tech companies. I think they have a clear bias, and it's pretty obvious whenever you look at it, but I am not going to get on another tangent yet. That was a criticism that I received from a very good friend of mine, and she said that I went on too many tangents in my last video. So I'm going to reel myself back in, and we are going to read this board. First, I'm going to collapse this thread. I don't really feel like this is a necessary thread to read, because it's not about a specific topic. It's very meta, and we can clearly see what the purpose of this board is. I accidentally clicked on the thread, so let's go back. Some of the functions are a tad bit different too, but we will hide this hide thread. So, fellow time traveler, which is the name given to every anon on this forum, says, anybody want to talk about the fan fiction scene of the 1990s and 2000s? That whole era was a big deal for us fanficsbergs. Before the internet, fanfic was very obscure even for nerd stuff. The rise of the internet in the latter half of the 1990s is when fanfiction started to take off and diversify. The 2000s was a golden age of fanfiction, in my opinion, with the heyday of FFN and things like DeviantArt being seen more as a novelty than a punchline. Even 2000s badfic was sort of legendary. My Immortal and Christian Humber Reloaded are both mid-2000s time capsules in many ways. Anyone from fanfic is more than welcome to head on over here if they want. So let's dig into this thread and see what's going on. Spoiler alert, I already know what's going on, but you know, you might not if you don't frequent this board very often. So, fellow time traveler says, oh, and this was 2019, by the way, so this is an old thread that apparently got bumped. Fellow time traveler says, I still cruise fanfiction.net and feel like not a whole lot has really changed there in the past 20 years. And a fellow time traveler responds and says, true, but that's because all the new fanfic writers have moved over to Archive of Our Own. And fellow time traveler responds to the OP, and says, I remember reading Silent Hill fanfiction on a tiny forum before discovering FFN. It's interesting how things became so centralized. I really do think that AO3's tagging is great, but it's also sort of sad how individual fan sites have largely disappeared. And then another one says, as a kid, I visited fanfiction.net and read some weird fanfiction about how Misty from Pokemon secretly had a micropenis, and it went into uncomfortable detail about how she used it and hid it from everyone. I was really confused and yet intrigued by it. This might have been around 2007. That's absurd. We have a picture of Brock just responding to this post. So we still got images on it sometimes. You know, it's not very image heavy, but there's still some. Another Anon replied, unsupervised internet access is one hell of a thing, huh? I can attest to this. I am a 4chan kid through and through. I found the website when I was either 11 or 12, sometime like shortly after I turned 12, I think, and it was all downhill from there. So another reaction image, and someone quoted the OP and said, I was reading this surprisingly good Naughty Sicko, I don't know how to say that because I'm not really into this, community, slash Sailor Moon crossover fic from 2003, where the whole cast gets warped to late 90s Tokyo, and Ruri, Eureka, and Inez are magical girls and also the only characters who have memories of their original lives. It's not really a crossover though, since no Sailor Moon characters even appear in it. And then someone replied to this Anon and said, that's the kind of thing that turns a kid into a porn addict for the rest of their lives. One of my in real life friends discovered Kingdom Hearts porn on Newgrounds, and well, during our teen years, he was that weird kid who had tons of Naruto hentai on his flip phone, and now he sends me random hentai when he wants to chat. He's still a pretty cool guy, but a bit of an autist sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I never got into, Rule 34 stuff. I never really understood it, but I do agree that exposure to porn at an early age really does turn kids into fucked up creatures at an early age. It's one of those things, one of the very few things that I wish was regulated better in the United States, but it is what it is. Fellow Time Traveler says it still exists. I mean, some sites are gone, but the big ones like Archive of Our Own and FF.net are still there. DeviantArt too. If people still use that for fics these days. Anyway, the former two tend to have a lot of older fanfiction writers, which is a wonderful thing. However, there's a chance if you are in a newer fandom, you will get some flavor of pause. Good thing AO3 lets you exclude tags so you can mostly avoid it. And another Anon said, I found the fanfiction. It's called Misty's Big Secret, last updated in 2003. Apparently it's yaoi too, and they have a link to this fanfiction, which I have really no interest in reading, so we won't do that. I never really got into fanfiction. I guess I never understood it. I understand the purpose of it now, but at the time I was one of those kids that thought that everything that I didn't like was weird. So, I've always had a bias against it. But I bet I could find some cool fan fictions. Hell, I could probably write a good fan fiction if I wanted to, but I just never got into that. I dated a girl that wrote fan fiction about Markiplier once, and I always thought that was really weird, but... So here we have the 2000s rock revival by fellow time traveler, you guessed it. And it's a green text and it says, "Be me. Eat at restaurant a few months ago. Here's Move Along by All American Rejects. Core memory unlocked." Gets taken back to elementary school days when song released and listened to it on the radio and online in the mid to late 2000s, but totally forgot it existed until hearing it again in 2023. I know I'm writing about my experience with All American Rejects specifically, but I want this thread to be about the 2000s punk slash nu metal slash rock era. Think Avril Lavigne, Linkin Park, Evanescence, 3 Days Grace, Three Doors Down, Fall Out Boy, Daughtry, Green Day, etc. Bands slash singers I also grew up listening to, and adults, teens, and other kids enjoyed before the whole scene became mocked as a huge meme in the 2010s, particularly Linkin Park and Evanescence. And only in recent years is being embraced again by what I'm guessing those who grew up in the era with this as I did. Share your favorite albums here. So this is a cool thread. I like a lot of those bands. Not really a lot of them, but like, 3 Days Grace, Three Doors Down, Fall Out Boy, Green Day. I like all those bands pretty well. I've seen Fall Out Boy and Green Day in concert. I liked Avril Lavigne's new album that she put out last year. Never really got into Linkin Park, but I like their big hits. Like everybody knows, In the End, Numb, especially the version they did with Jay-Z, which was Numb / Encore. I really bumped that song back in the day. I was too young to really understand the meaning of it, but as I get older, I start to realize just how deep some of these songs went. Another fellow time traveler says, "I heard NSYNC at a Lowe's a couple months ago. Not sure if that counts." It's a weird place to hear NSYNC at. I really wouldn't feel like, people that build homes and work on homes would be NSYNC fans. But maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe there are a lot of NSYNC fans that love to work on their houses. I guess anybody can do it. Another fellow time traveler says, "Maladroit, I don't know how to pronounce that, and the Green Album are great. Hybrid Theory was a good album too. I have the deluxe edition on CD actually." That's cool. CDs are cool. I really only started getting into mainstream forms of music in the later years of the 2000s and avoided a lot of the modern radio rock like the plague. I don't feel like I missed out on much. Well, you did. You missed out on a whole lot. And I remember riding around with my brother in his car blasting 3 Days Grace. That album they put out in like 2006. I think it might have been called X. I might be wrong about that, but they put it on an album in like 2006 that went really fucking hard. Like super hard. Had a song called Riot on it. That was a really good song. Someone else said, "I went out eating during a small family reunion about a year or two ago at a restaurant by the water, and the band, a small local one, was playing a bunch of punk rock and nu metal. It was really awesome. I loved it. Brought back tons of memories. I'm desperately trying to get my car fixed and finish school so I can just drive around the area and listen to local bands filled with old guys. They truly are the coolest." Yeah, I gotta say, like, local musicians are one of the best things that could happen to a small town. My small town has had a few popular musicians that were famous, and then a lot of people that never quite made it. But I still listen to those people's music. A lot of them are like bluegrass and country. A lot of country artists around here. You know, it's a shame that not everybody makes it in the music industry, because there are so many people that have talent that just never have the connections or, you know, the marketing skills to get their product seen and then picked up by a bigger company, like a big label, you know. We live in an era where you can pretty much do your own thing as far as music goes, which is really cool. But on the flip side of that, it's made it so saturated that like it's so hard to capture people's attention for more than 10 seconds. You know, if they don't like your song in the first 5 seconds, they're probably not going to listen to you ever again, because there's just so many options for consumers. Like, it's a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. So here we have a thread that says modern retro material that actually does it right. I had to scroll past the image because it was slightly pornographic, and I don't want to really have to edit that out. So we're just going to read the thread. It says, let's have a new thread without a ton of broken images. Have there been any new forms of retro media, could be movies, games, anime, websites, etc., that wanted to look old and actually succeeded? There's an artist called Blue the Bone who makes retro-styled animations, cheesecake, and porn. Like any modern hack, he overdoses on visual clutter and uses filters that don't actually resemble the time period he's trying to emulate. But despite that, I think his style is consistently decent. If he relied less on computers and filters, then I think he'd be a much better artist, but that goes without saying for most contemporary artists. The really weird things happen when he tries to make modern character designs and media look old, like pick number 2, that we cannot see. It isn't exactly wrong, but there is something perplexing about viewing characters in series that were developed specifically with modern aesthetics in mind. So this is a long thread. You know, they've been going strong for over 3 years now, and there's 242 posts, 286 images. So that looks like that's going to be a thread for another video. You know, I'm not going to do that with this one. We're just doing a little surface dive. I don't know if that's a thing, but we're just going to hide this thread and move on. So here we've got 90s/2000s cars in Rice, Riders on the Storm. So let's open this thread and look at some of these cars. I'm not really a big car guy. You know, my car gets me from point A to point B and looks halfway decent doing it, so that's all I care about. I'm not really into fixing up cars or anything like that. Somebody said, 1990 Chevrolet Camaro IROC Z, Irish redneck out cruisin'. Growing up in bumfuck Appalachia, you saw a lot of these on the road back in the 90s and 2000s. This fellow time traveler says, there's somebody around here that DD's a 3rd gen IROC Z. And then another anon says, long live Max Power, which I assume was a magazine based on information that is available later in this thread. There's a missing file and another missing file. And then another fellow time traveler says, glorious factory rice coming through. And then we get a picture of the car that they mentioned earlier, you know, and what they said was completely spot on. As somebody that lives in Appalachia, I definitely see a lot of these. You know, a lot more during my childhood, of course, but there's still a few on the road today. I think I might have saw one today. But now that I see this, I'm going to be looking for these, and I'm going to be seeing them a lot more now that I'm aware of the phenomenon. So, it'll be interesting. Here we have a picture of Max Power magazine. And then we've got a Subaru S201 factory rice. It just looks really, really I'm not gonna lie, I just don't really like the design on it. I don't like this. I don't like that on cars. And the spoiler, I'm not a big fan of spoilers. I just think they look goofy, especially in a car like this. Like, no offense to any car bros that might watch this channel, but it's just not for me. Here we've got another car. It's an Eclipse. I almost drove one of these once. I was looking for a new car as a teenager, and there was an Eclipse for sale, but I think it was a manual, and I didn't know how to drive a manual, which I still don't know how to drive a manual. That says a lot about me. And then they quote Jim Morrison and say, "Into this house we're born, ... Another anon says, "Hey, I have a story, why not share it here, right?" So back in the 2000s, I see a Scooters video for the Logical song. It has this cool black Mercedes. Not sure what happened. Perhaps I've simply missed the name blurb, but I remember I couldn't find that song again for years. I remember I've eventually heard it once again somewhere around 2007 or so, and actually had to come up and ask what is the name of the song that plays. And that's how I found out it is Scooter's version of the Logical song. Even then, I couldn't find nothing about the car for years. I believe someone on IMCDB mentioned that the car was in chrome and flamin', but it still took some time monitoring those secondhand magazines to stumble upon the right issue. And then even getting one was a story. I've finally found one in 2022, and the guy who sold it declined my first attempt to get it since I am from Russia, and we've managed to become bad guys at that point. I've asked my friend from US to order it for me onto my US middleman address, and the dude canceled the order because of the Russian name in it. Said something about Russians circumventing sanctions or something. That was summer 2022. Luckily, nobody bought the magazine until I found another guy to get it for me. I've finally got it in April 2023. Hey, if anyone would like the scans in the original quality, let me know. I'll keep this tab open for some time. So that's a wholesome story. This person was just trying their hardest to get their hands on that magazine, and they finally got it. When there's a will, there's a way. This Anon says, "That's quite the story, Anon. Congrats on the cool ride." And then they say, "Yeah, go for it." So then they dropped the files, and they said, "Here goes," and they sent the link and said, "Might be a bit of an overkill, but I just scanned my mags in 600 dpi and let it rest there. I try to share them on occasion when I see some interest sparkling. Have a number of old magazines at this point. It's a shame so few people are as crazy about old custom cars as I am." The link has the full article about Mercedes and some extra scans from the same issue of Chrome and Flamin' that I found interesting. By the way, that Mercedes appeared in silver in the Scooter video. Seem it's been repainted somewhere between 90s and early zeros. Definitely the same car though. There aren't any others like that, and that supercharger is a fully working piece as well, not a Pro Street bogus stuff. So this person says, "Thanks, your scan collection would be a good fit for a place like archive.org, lots of old mags and stuff on there. And that supercharger is a fully working piece as well, not a Pro Street bogus stuff. Rad." And then they said, "Yeah, I might do just that one day. Scan all my magazines and upload them on the archive. It just takes too much time, which I do not have at the moment, unfortunately. The job takes most of my free time these days. Still, I'm trying my best. So far, my priority are books related to ancient Egypt, though. I've been scanning and uploading them on LibGen. Still has 2 more books left. Either magazines are on the backlog so far, but I'm really hoping that I will get some time to spend with them. Some of the articles are just fascinating. This person says, I always thought that 90s muscle cars were really ugly, like none of the designs seem to make sense. They're an awkward in-between of sleek and bulky, like it's trying to be both but failing at it. For a good 20 years, 90s through the 2000s, muscle cars just weren't that good in my opinion. The 2000s is when they started making them sleek again and gave them a coherent design. I agree with that. 90s and 2000s muscle cars were pretty ugly. I don't know much about their performance, but I think they were pretty ugly. So this person just posts some pictures. There's a Mustang from 99 and a Mustang from 2019, and then a Camaro from 97 and a Camaro from 2017. They said, get him out of here. Don't give him his jacket. So this Anon says, oh shit, Anon, that 97 Camaro just gave me Gran Turismo 2 flashbacks. Crazy they managed to put 600 plus cars in a PSX game. Never played Gran Turismo 2. I was more of a Need for Speed kind of guy. Need for Speed and Midnight Club. We get a picture of a 95 Impala, and this car has definitely seen some shit. You can just tell by looking at it. Then we've got this car, which may be the modernized version of that car. I don't really know. It just says hero.jpg. And here we've got some old trucks. Here's a truck from what appears to be, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe 50s. Another one. And then a muscle car from the probably 70s. And then another one. That one looks a little bit older than the previous one, but I could be wrong. This time Traveler says, the 90s is this ethereal thing that's hard to explain to a zoomer why it was good. The cars were visually and mechanically clean designs and weren't sharp angles or busy looking. The racing was between several manufacturers and were any horse races. They were often just the stock cars with the bolted-in safety cages, except the BTCC had their engines lowered and bull bars hid under the bumpers. The liveries were equally clean and iconic. The cars didn't have to weigh anything particularly. Passionate people led the companies before later cynicism took over. See the differences between Golf MK3 advertising versus the MK4s. I truly love them, and the people who get not just excited by, but in love with the post-era cars I just find bewildering. You can get 500 HP from a 1.2L now, but my love is for the time when base econo cars could be made to sing and didn't cost 30 plus grand. Those days are long gone, my friend. This Anon says, the 90s ones look so much better it's not even funny. I don't know anything about cars, but I really took 90s cars for granted at the time. Back then, I thought they looked generic compared to older cars and didn't have any appreciation for them. I still prefer the way older vehicles looked, but nowadays I have an appreciation for the look that I didn't have then. Another Anon says, middle of the 90s circa Gran Turismo 1 is the aesthetic peak for me. And they list some cars here. There's loads of theories for why cars are ugly nowadays. Computer-aided design, regulations, buying habits, loss of talent. Mainly, I blame the loss of talent that lets things like a reliance on computer-aided design in the design stages through the door. The American cars of the era are nice, but mechanically a lot less refined at the time. They've got leaf spring rears, wider tolerances, they're made the old way underneath the skins basically. The first Corvette to have real suspension marked the change to modern practices. And that is the end of that thread. That was an interesting one. I actually learned a little bit in that one. Still not a car guy, but maybe one day I will get there. So this anon says, Y2K was 20 years ago. With a new decade upon us and the 2000s being officially retro in the eyes of mainstream pop culture, I'm wondering what 2000s nostalgia will be like in the 2020s. 80s nostalgia got big in the 2000s and is still going strong with all that weird vaporwave art that appeared in the early 2010s and stuff like Stranger Things in the late 2010s. More relevant to this board, 1990s nostalgia first became a big thing this decade, but it was more prominent on the internet than TV or movies. Now we're seeing 2000s nostalgia start to take root in the very late 2010s. I've noticed a lot of Zoomers posting 2000s nostalgia compilations on YouTube in 2018 and 2019, and it kind of reminds me of the first big wave of 90s nostalgia that got big online in 2010, 2012 or so. Hell, retro itself is simply a newer version of Y2K over on the old board, but expanded to also include the 90s. I'm wondering if we'll see more 2000s nostalgia and whether or not the media will start pandering to it. Pick unrelated. There was no pick. That was a thread from the last day of 2019. So they were really thinking the big thoughts that New Year's Eve. We're not going to go into that thread. I might save that for another video, because that's kind of a longish one, and I don't really want to do it. So this one is called Wally George Hot Seat Show, and they say, "This is the craziest nostalgic TV show you've never heard of from 1980s California. This show's format was stolen and ruined by Jerry Springer, the host. Wally George, an angry, loudmouth Republican who shouts down hilarious liberal guests and always trash talks them. The show, Hot Seat. This was Southern California's most high-energy show at the time. It was a must-see to locals who lived near Disneyland. The guests. The guests were pre-selected to be loony, crazy liberals, and they're just too funny, and they're real people even when the show can seem fixed. This is a must-see. It's a testament to how much retro shit you'll never see because no one will ever remember it/post about it." Yeah, that's true. It's a lot. I mean, just imagine 20 years from now, like how much art there is out in the world now. Assuming it all makes it that far, you know. I know that archiving is a pretty hard thing to do, with so much information available. So there's going to be a lot of lost media, I'd say, over the next couple of decades. But either way, this is kind of an off-topic thread, because this is from the 80s, and this board is specifically late 90s and early 2000s. So here we've got a music of the 1990s and 2000s thread. It says, "These guys think they're bad because they walk slow." Let's see what it is. Saturday Night Fever. I'm not going to get into that thread because it looks like a lot of people sharing links to YouTube videos, so we're not going to get into that. Okay. Okay, here's an interesting thread. Let me open this one. It says, has any of you Zoomers born in 1997 seen Twin Towers or witnessed 9/11, even if you were 3 or 4 back then? And someone says, born in the end of the 80s, somewhere in Europe. Just came back from school, turning on the TV to watch cartoons. Looped images of plane hitting World Trade Center with a second plane appears. Witness this live. No cartoons for you, kid. Not today. I was a kid, but I knew shits will be fucked up a little bit more at the moment. Someone said, I'm also from Europe, but born in the beginning of the 90s, and that was pretty much my experience too. Goddamn planes ruining my after-school TV. This anon says, I'm a Clapistani, born in the early 90s, and I remember hearing about the attacks when I got to school in the morning and not realizing how big of a deal it actually was. I thought terrorist attacks were a fairly regular thing due to a certain computer game I played. It sounds harsh, but with all due respect to the people who died, I didn't care then and don't care now. Well, sounds like you lack empathy. This person says, I don't think it was even until I was 10 that I even knew what 9/11 was or what the Twin Towers were. I had heard it mentioned, but for some reason, when I heard Twin Towers, for some reason I thought it was just a couple of stone pillars out in the desert for no reason, so I didn't get why it was so big. Then I saw a documentary on it on Nickelodeon, of all places, for the first time, so that was the first time I really understood what happened. This anon says, I was about 10 when it happened. I remember my parents showing me stuff about it and we talked about it in the school. I remember being sad but not fully realizing what happened. Years later I'd stop caring and just laugh at 9/11 memes. If anything, it's amazing in hindsight that in 2002/2003 we glorified going to war with Iraq and the other rushed responses to it, i.e. the Patriot Act. My little brother was 8 when we declared war, and he brought home some Scholastic news magazines that usually had educational stuff, glorifying the Patriots going to defend our freedom in Iraq. Wish we kept that just to show how poorly it aged. I hate the fixation on 9/11 and never forget. Yeah, it sucks people died, but you can't spend 20 plus years grieving and letting politicians pass shitty laws to take advantage of the fear. I'm more curious if the older generation spent this much time grieving over Pearl Harbor. 9/11 needs to be treated the same at this point. Both were a depressing moments in history, but like Pearl Harbor in the present, 9/11 needs to be accepted that it happened without bogging down our daily lives in remembrance. As far as Zoomers, none of the older ones I've talked to remember anything pre-9/11. At best, their first memories were right around when it happened or of their grievance/confusion. Unfortunately, it defined the later half of my childhood, but I still remember everything just being normal or less afraid before then. I even remember picking up family from the airport right outside their terminal before security revamped and only let passengers pass security with minimal exemptions, escorting the disabled, children flying alone, etc. I've even been in the cockpit of the plane and talked to pilots a few times. I forget if the plane was flying or landed, but regardless, good luck doing that now. I don't know if Zoomers can even comprehend doing anything like that anymore due to the increase of security and surveillance that they grew up under. This anon says, I was pulled out of kindergarten because of 9/11. I saw the headline on the newspaper and my dad said it was an inside job. His dad probably posts on Reddit's Our Conspiracy Now. This person said, of course I missed that. Corporate-controlled monopoly internet where all corps use unprecedented tech to pick what you see and all act as one is fucking sickening. It's evil. Which is funny anyway, because you know shit like no planes gets pushed by intelligence agencies and that. Fix the problem, I don't know what they meant by that. This person says, I was about 6 when the planes hit the towers. The only reason I still remembered it is because Mom pulled my ass into church the following day with one of the biggest masses I've ever seen. This person says, I only remember an episode of SpongeBob being different from how I remembered seeing it. This was that one where Squidward gets the gasoline bucket poured everywhere. Other than that, I didn't even know what 9/11 was until I looked it up on YouTube when I was 10 and went down a rabbit hole. Somebody says, I was in the plane. And this anon says, did you do a cool parachute jump or are you a ghost? And this person says, Zoomers born in 1997. They were quoting that is. And they say, I prefer the term zillennial as opposed to Zoomer to refer to microgeneration born roughly between the years 1996 and 2001, so as to separate the core of Gen Z born generally post-2002. The childhoods and experiences of a zillennial, which would be a large chunk of those who have 2000s nostalgia, are vastly different from the childhoods and experiences of what I would consider a Zoomer, whose childhood might include such things as Minecraft and Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever. That's straight facts. Zillennial needs to be a more popular term. I identify as a zillennial, and I wish that it caught on, because I don't really... Technically, I guess you would consider me a Zoomer, but, like, I don't really identify with that generation so much. Like, certain aspects of it I do, like the insane social media, but other than that, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm a mixture of millennials and Zoomers. So, like, I feel like the Zillennial label definitely describes me better than either one. Congratulations, you have managed to come up with an even worse word than Zoomer. I wouldn't say that. It sounds funny, but it makes sense. This person says, I don't know if you've been living under a rock for the past few years, but the term zillennial isn't new, nor is the idea of a term to refer to a microgeneration new either. The term exennial refers to the microgeneration of Gen X/millennial cuspers, just as zillennial refers to the microgeneration of Gen Z/millennial cuspers. 3302 didn't come up with anything. Visit websites outside of Anon Cafe, please. So I'm not going to go further with this because this just looks like it's going to turn into a post fest, so I'm going to move on, see if there's any other threads that can catch our interest. Here is movies and TV shows of the 1990s and 2000s. Which ones are your favorites? Pick related, and there is no pick. There must have been a mass purge or something of files, or probably some kind of error with the servers. I don't know, I'm not a tech guy, so I'm not going to sound smart on it, and usually when I speak on things that I'm not educated about, I get some criticism from my dear friends, and I don't want to be criticized by my dear friends. But I'm not really going to go into this because it's such a long thread, but I will say my opinion on it. And the best TV show of the 2000s was Even Stevens. As far as childhood nostalgia goes, Even Stevens was pretty based, and Shia LaBeouf, I'm glad he became what he became. I never would have imagined it. I always thought that I would see him as the goofy kid from Even Stevens and Holes, but he really became a very, very based individual. It looks like that's the last thread on the first page. So with that, I am going to go ahead and end this video. I hope you have enjoyed our time browsing Anon Cafe today, and I hope that you will check this website out for yourself. It's an interesting board. It's an interesting concept for a board that is the retro board, and you know, it would be cool if more people would join in and provide intelligent discussion. You know, we don't need people posting on these boards. We need people to actually fill them with intelligent and, you know, really wholesome discussions, because that's what these, in my opinion, were. It's not really problematic or anything like that, or at least nothing I saw was problematic. So, you know, it's just a really cool website, and as I said before, the design is comfy. It's a very comfy design. You know, it makes you feel like you're in the 90s or 2000s. And we need more of this. Unique design like this, and stuff like that. I really like it. But yeah, this has been Dead Internet Chronicles with my new microphone. I am always open to criticism, so if you have any critiques of this video, please let me know down in the comments, or find another way to contact me. There's plenty of ways to contact me if you really think hard enough about it. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.